I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the last week. I want to say some things to you, and I want to talk about the biggest highlights of the wisdom books that I didn't get to say because we weren't in class. And I just couldn't bring myself to just let you only have the Bible project and the reading and my questions. So here's a couple of thoughts. This week, I suspect you guys have a ton of work and all that kind of stuff. And if we were in class, I would tell you that I don't care, because in my class, I told you what to expect way back in August. And you had plenty of time to plan it out and work on it. And the fact that none of you did that is only because none of us ever do, and we're major procrastinators. Having said all that, I kind of do care. And so here's the deal. Your assignments for me are due Friday at 5. That's when you need to get them to me. However, there is no penalty for turning it in late. So you can do with that information whatever you wish. I have to turn, whatever grades are going to be turned in at some point. So that would be kind of I really have to have it before then. But I want you guys to manage life and get through it. And here's where we are. So if other classes are wearing you guys out, don't worry too much about this one. But on the other hand, some of you are like, I just want to be done by Friday and put a full period on this. And if that's the case, by all means do it. You guys who are in 11th grade, this is our last class. I won't have anything for us in the future weeks, while you may still have things from your other classes. I don't know how your other teachers will handle it. So if you've got other classes and you want to just put off some of the Bible stuff till next week, that is fine with me. Don't forget, I probably won't try to track you down. Seniors, I don't know when I've got to have your grades actually turned in and all that kind of stuff. And I know that you're actually finished on Friday. So if you want to say, look, I'm just going to put my head down and do whatever it's got to be done this week, by all means do so. I have one request. If you are writing the essay, could you send it to me typed? I don't know that I can read a long essay handwritten, where you take pictures of it. Try to send that to me typed if you can. The test, if you decide to take the test, will be through a Google form. So you'll need to have access to the internet to be able to get it, fill it out, hit submit, and I'll have it. So if you have questions about that, that is fine. I will send out tomorrow morning the link to the test to whoever has asked for it from me. And if you expected it and don't get it, let me know, and I'll get it to you. Otherwise, I'll assume you're writing the essay. You're watching the TED Talk, A.J. Jacobs, on the year of living biblically, and I'll look forward to it. You're going to ask this question: how long does my essay need to be? And my answer is, it needs to be long enough that you write something good. I don't really care. I figure it'll probably take you about 2 to 3 pages. If you can do it in less than that, really, really good job and well done. But that'll be hard, I think. If you need more and you want to use all kinds of resources and whatever you can find, go for it. I don't think that's absolutely necessary, but I want you to try to incorporate what you learned from the Old Testament this year and doing some evaluation of what he has to say. All right. Journals. Sorry, there's just no way to avoid all this stuff in the journals at the end. But I would love to see them. If you're handwriting yours, you can take pictures of it and send it to me, I guess, or whatever way you feel like works best. If you're typing it, you can just email it to me. That would be great. Again, due Friday at 5, but there's no penalty if you're late. So use that information however you see fit. Also, journals. For the journal for Psalms, you don't need to include kind of key people in Psalms. You don't need to include an outline for Psalms. Your journal entry for Psalms will probably have a list of a few of the authors, We'll have a range of dates because the first Psalm, I think the first Psalm is Psalm 90, written by Moses, and that would be in something like 12 to 1400 BC. And then there are probably Psalms written as late as 5 or 600 BC even. So you're probably going to have a range on that for your dates. Your observations and questions from Psalms are likely to come just from what I assigned you to read, but you may have observations and questions you've come up from previous reading or experience with the Psalms. Feel free to include them, whatever you would like. If you have any other questions about those, let me know. Okay, let's move on to wisdom literature. I'm going to do the share the screen, and I want you guys to feel free to interrupt me if you need to, okay? If you've got a question you want to ask or something you want to bring up, you can do it, okay? So I wanted to talk a little bit about biblical wisdom literature and what we should think about these books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, and Job. Let's get started with we have to start with the word wisdom. If you look in the dictionary, the definition is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. Basically, wisdom is a skill. We've talked a lot about doctrine and things you're supposed to think or believe. In some cases, a command to do and obey. Wisdom is like a talent or a skill to develop. And it's being able to take all the truth that you know and apply it so that your life goes in a direction that you intend. So we might look at someone who skillfully navigates relationships, and we would say there's some wisdom there. Or we might look at someone who skillfully works through his business, and we say he's got some business wisdom. When it comes to biblical wisdom, it's particularly the skill in the art of godly living. In other words, we're not just talking about, can I get through life successfully, but can I get through it with a Godward direction? Which is to say that there's a moral component to biblical wisdom. Wisdom is not merely just a skill to be used when you need it. It's part of moral living at all points. And so we start here, Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In the Bible's economy, you can't have wisdom unless it starts with a sense of God's grandeur, greatness, holiness, with respect for God. If you try to start anywhere else, in fact, if fear of God, the respect and admiration of God is not the foundational component of your wisdom, you might be able to navigate the stock market or the business world or good friendships in a way that gets outcomes you desire, but it won't be in any respect biblical wisdom. It's always going to be oriented about God. Now, to put that in more, this verse here is like the key to understanding biblical wisdom. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. The issue is that you don't say, how do I see this? How do I experience it? How do I feel about it? What's the prevailing persuasive ideas to me? Rather, in all your ways, acknowledge him, God, and he will make straight your paths. And so this idea of wisdom is that I don't think, how do I understand this? How do I discover it? Can I use my natural reason and rationality to comprehend it? But rather, I start with acknowledging God and believing his sovereign rule and his direction for my life is the key. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. You might be clever. In fact, this group is exceedingly clever. You guys are really great. And there will always be for you a temptation to think, I can handle this, I can manage it on my own. And biblical wisdom says not to kind of lean on that understanding, not to be wise in your own eyes, but rather admire, respect, honor the Lord, and turn away from evil. And that will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. It will bring life. Now, if we understand, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, he will make straight your paths. That's the definition. That's the comprehensive understanding of biblical wisdom. Then Ecclesiastes is going to tell us, trust in the Lord with all your heart, do not lean on your own understanding, in all your, we're going to take out the word ways and put in a specific part of life. In all of your search for meaning, acknowledge him, and you'll make straight your paths. You read Ecclesiastes, and much of you guys said this is kind of about what's meaningful in life. Well, it goes counter to the culture that you live in, you said. At Ecclesiastes, the writer would tell us not to think about and focus on all the things that we hear about in the world and people who are around us, but rather to think about more spiritually minded ideas. Well, true biblical wisdom says, don't just figure it out on your own. Submit to God in your search for meaning. Job, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on understanding. In all your suffering. I shouldn't say suffering for meaning. It should just say suffering. Acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. I just did this presentation yesterday and today, and I didn't have a chance to go back. I shouldn't say I didn't have a chance. I just didn't go back and proofread it. So take out the word for meaning there. In all your suffering, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. So if we're gonna manage suffering, and you will suffer, you're going to experience affliction. Job is going to help you grasp how to do that in a biblically wise way. Song of Songs, also called Song of Solomon, also called Canticles, just depends on where you read it. This book says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, don't lean on your understanding. Don't listen to the culture and try to figure out what's best for me. Rather, in all your sexuality, acknowledge God, and he will make straight your paths. So we submit our bodies literally to him. All right, so let's take a look at the individual books. If I had class, we would have spent a couple of days in Proverbs, and instead of having you read it and pick one topic like friendship or money or marriage, I would have written 10 topics on the board. And I would have said, all right, guys, which one do you guys want to talk about? And then when you picked money, I would have pulled my sheet of notes about money, and we would have gone over what the proverb says about money. And then I would have said, all right, we got time for another one. What do you want to do? We would have said anger. All right, let's pull up anger or emotion or friendship. And we learned that Proverbs, if we're going to understand them correctly, you have to see this at the very beginning in the introduction. The writer of Proverbs, which may be Solomon, says, hear my son, your father's instructions. This is really an important detail if you're going to understand Proverbs. It's addressed to a son. The next line of Proverbs 1:8 is, and remember your mother's instruction, your mother's teaching. So it wasn't just that the father was the one instructing, but the parent. The father's the one who's writing it, and he's writing to his son. Now, this comes out to be important because Proverbs is written to a son, so it's advising a man from his particular needs and perspective. If you were reading the Proverbs, and over again, it warns you about the adulteress. You might be thinking, all right, that's a lot of warnings about the adulteress. Why not the adulterer? I mean, isn't he just as guilty? And the answer would be yes. In fact, if you were reading it and you wanted to kind of address it, you might go, hey, this is sort of old-fashioned. It's all about the problem that women are. But the issue is, it's not that it was sexist. It's addressed to a son. It's got a particular person in mind as he's constructing the Proverbs and putting them together. And his son's problem was not the adulterer. That wasn't a temptation for him. The adulteress was a temptation for him. And so if you want to understand Proverbs well, you have to understand first that it's a instructions for a son. All right, next. This was a particular question somebody asked in their response about Proverbs. You read this question. I read this proverb: better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Well, what's wrong with having a brother who's far away, or a close friend who's far away? What's wrong with long distance relationships? And the answer to that question is nothing really, except they're inherently incapable of doing some things that friends are to do, which is be hands-on. At some level, my guess is this bit of quarantine season has driven home the need for a friend who's close by. It's not the same to talk by Zoom or Discord or House Party or, I don't know, whatever apps you guys use. And you need someone who can sit across the table from you. It is sometimes easier to have digital relationships because that limits the scope of how much input a person can have in my life, and how much really input's not the issue, it's imposition. A good friend has the power to impose on me and start to affect my life in practical and meaningful ways. And this proverb is helping us recognize that as much as it is to have really good friends, and many of my best friends, including the guys I played cards with last night online, are all living in other states. I have so many good friends in Tennessee and Georgia and Missouri and places I've lived before coming here. But those friendships lack a critical component toward healthy relationships, which is they're not here. They're not flesh and blood, tangibly near me. So if I need to move furniture, they can't help. If I need someone who can kind of walk with me through a moment, they can do it a little bit over a phone, but the person who can, be close by, who can sit across the table, who can hold the coffee cup, those things are really vital to part of true relationships. So that's what the Proverbs here is saying. And when I asked about Proverbs, and I said, Proverbs aren't you said, the difference between a proverb and a promise. A promise is something that is more unconditional, whereas a proverb is a generally true statement that fits with, happens a lot. Well, take a look at this. This is from Proverbs 26, verse 4. Answer not, or we would say don't answer, a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. So if there's a fool and he has some kind of folly, don't play by his rules. Don't go along with his foolish things, because then you'll end up becoming like him. Right? That's the first proverb. Don't answer a fool according to his folly, lest you end up being foolish yourself. All right. Next line. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Don't you kind of want to go, hey, Solomon, which is it? Do we not answer the fool, or do we answer the fool? Do we not answer him according to his folly, or do we answer him according to his folly? Well, that's the thing about Proverbs. You got to discern which is which. Sometimes I don't want to go along with the fool because it will make me foolish. Other times I want to help the fool see the outcome of his foolishness. And there are times for both. The Proverbs giving you general truths that you can use sometimes. We have stuff like this too. Ever heard this one? Many hands make light work. would have you respond here, but it's just awkward. So I'll take that as a yes. You've heard that. Many hands make light work. We're just saying if a lot of people help, the work becomes easier. How about this one? Too many cooks spoil the soup. Well, if I have too many people who are giving input, who are helping, it often makes it go badly. Well, now, which of those is true? Many hands make light work, or too many cooks spoil the soup? Well, they're kind of both true, just in different circumstances. That's the nature of Proverbs. So you want to use Proverbs well, which is to get the instruction, get wisdom, and then learn to apply it over a lifetime. Proverbs are like that. But the most important part is you're saying, God, tell me how to live life. I'm going to orient myself about you. All right, let's get to Ecclesiastes, because we spent some time on Proverbs. You guys did that for a week by yourselves. You answered some questions. I sent you those sheets that have my thoughts on it, so you can do all that by yourself. Ecclesiastes is the vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I heard a guy describing this once. Hevel, the word for vanity, is like a vapor, and it's just there for a second and then gone. And he described his gas grill on when he was getting ready to cook steaks and dripped a little bit of water on it, and immediately it sizzled and was gone. It was dry again. And he goes, that's vanity. There and then gone. And he describes it like striving after the wind. Okay, so here's your exercise today. Get a net, like a fishing net or something like that. And I want you to go out and catch a gallon of wind. And you're like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You can't catch wind. As soon as whatever you would catch it in, you hold it and it's gone. The wind can't keep being wind. That's his point. That so much of the things that we chase after are actually like chasing after wind. It feels like you're about to get something, but it's not. So he shows you explicitly. He tried wisdom, understanding, and education, got nothing. He tried to seek after pleasure. He says, I denied myself nothing. And he felt like that was empty. He wanted to understand the world with psychology or with physics or chemistry or math, or he wanted to understand the history or archaeology. It didn't help. He said, I looked around and I saw oppression and oppression and injustice. And I wanted there to be justice, but all that justice does is fix it for a moment, and somebody who's worse comes along right after that. So I'm going to anticipate someday at least it'll get better. And he said, that's empty. You don't know that. And even if you get better days, they get worse again. So I'll gain power and influence. I'll become a strong man who can do what he wants. And he said that was empty. All of it was vanity of vanities, chasing after the wind. Even if you got it in your hands, it was gone the next day. And at the end of the day, Ecclesiastes focuses a lot on the fact that you're going to die. And if you're going to die, all that you could have amassed in this life ultimately goes to somebody else. That's just his take. And if you create a great world, if you solve problems, if you change the world, you're going to leave that changed world to somebody else who will probably twist it back into something worse. So even if you're great, and some of you can be great, that's not enough. Anything, his words under the sun are enough. So he tells you, the words of the wise are like goads. A goad was a sharp stick that was behind a horse to keep the horse from backing up when it was pulling the wagon. And so it kept you going forward. The words of the wise keep you going forward. They're like nails firmly fixed. That just says the same thing, are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd. Now here it's an acknowledgement of God. If you're going to get wise words, you got to get them from him. My son, beware of anything beyond these. Of the making of many books, there is no end, and much studying is weariness of the flesh. Feel like that? You get close to the end of April and May, and you're starting to get like, I want to quit studying. Ecclesiastes is way ahead of you. He says this, the end of the matter, All has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments. If you seek education, pleasure, understanding, justice, better days, power, something like those things, they're all going to leave you still thirsty, as if you found the mirage and drank the sand when what you needed was water. Actually, water is this: wherever you go, wherever you are, whatever school that you end up in, whether you end up online or actually at the physical school, whether you end up in a job that's wonderful and gives you all kinds of accolades and accomplishments, or whether you end up in a fairly menial job that you clock in and clock out and go home, he says the answer to the real significance in all of it is this: worship God, keep his commandments. At the end of the day, that is the only thing that will last. If you are the one who comes up with the vaccine for the coronavirus, it will change the world. But the only thing that will last is if you fear God and keep his commandments. For God will bring every deed into judgment, every secret thing, whether good or evil. That's the only stuff that ultimately matters. And so Ecclesiastes would have us not chase after the wind, but to live whatever life God gives, great or small, with this one thing that is of substance. All right. I won't spend more time on Ecclesiastes, even though I would enjoy it. I do want to say this. If you read the NIV or other modern translations, this is just an example. Looking at 7:27. Look, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered. All right. That word discovered is the word later in this passage translated found or finding. Same word. Adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found: God created man upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. All right. So he's searching around and he discovers one upright man out of 1,000, and in all the women he knows, not one upright woman. Apparently, according to the writer of Ecclesiastes, men are 1/1000th more upright than women. The problem is that's not what it says. This is the New King James, and the ESV is similar. Here's what I have found. See where it said I have discovered in the NIV, says the preacher. Adding one thing to another to find out the reason, which my soul still seeks, but I cannot find. One man among 1,000 I have found, but a woman among all these I have not found. Truly this only I have found, that God made man upright, but they, man, has sought many schemes. All right, the word found there is kind of interesting, isn't it? I found one man among 1,000. What could that possibly mean? He saw 1,000 men, but he only found one of them. And among all the women, he only found one woman. That he didn't find any women, rather. That's kind of weird, especially since if this is Solomon, in his household, he couldn't, take two steps without bumping into one of his 300 wives or 700 concubines. Surely he could find a woman. But when you understand that the word is to find out, means to understand. He was searching for understanding. And here's what one of the most wise men in the history of humanity said: I look at men and maybe I understand 1 in 1,000. And this man goes, and I look at women, I don't understand them at all. We don't understand each other. And certainly men and women have different ways of viewing the world. And here's Ecclesiastes telling us that 3,000 years ago, that we're beyond understanding. And that is something that goes in Ecclesiastes. The world, our sense of suffering, how God is at work, it's beyond our understanding. And so let's not get above our pay grade by going, I'm supposed to understand and get it. Actually, what we're supposed to do is worship God and obey his commandments and let understanding be something that belongs to the Creator. All right, let's look at Job. Speaking of understanding, Job, probably the oldest book in the Bible. Based on the way Job lives and the culture that's around him and the kind of life it describes him having, he's very much like Abraham and Isaac in the patriarchal period. That's the culture that you see. And so Job was almost certainly written in the days of Abraham or Isaac or even before, perhaps. So that means it predates the book of Genesis, which Moses wrote by 500 or 600 years. Job is the oldest book in the Bible. And isn't it interesting that the first book that God inspires is about suffering? It's not a new problem. It is one that is always been an issue for humanity. Now, this is important. You read the book of Job, I presume, or you're about to read it. In the first 2 chapters of Job, we see this background scene in which God is actually interacting with Satan. And God says, or to Satan, look at my servant Job. And Satan goes, oh, I've seen him. He worships you because you give him everything. Job was wealthy and prosperous. He had kids and livestock. Everything was going great for Job. And Satan said, you know, he worships you because you pay him. You've bribed him. That's why he worships. And so God says, all right, take away everything. You can take away his house. You can take away his livelihood. You even get to take away his children. And that all happens in chapter 1. Then in chapter 2, Satan says it's because he's still healthy. And God says, all right, well, don't take his life, but you can take his health. And so Job becomes sick and in pain. He's boils all over his body. And so he's suffering physical pain along with all the emotional pain and grief of chapter 1. And if you read the entire book of Job, Job never, ever finds out what was the source of his suffering. He was a righteous and upright man. His friends are going to come along and say, hey, God is fair, and so you must have done something. We know that's not true. Job never finds out. Even when he encounters God for the last 5 chapters or 6 chapters of the book, whatever it was, even then, God never explains it to him. And Job, in all this, isn't perfect. In fact, much of the book, when Job speaks, what he's asking for is, if only I could see God and make my case, that this kind of suffering doesn't really fit for me, that it's not fair, that he starts to question whether God really understands or is doing the right thing for him. Because he's been upright, because he sacrifices things to God, he's doing the right stuff. Job isn't perfect. He questions God's justice in all this. And eventually at the end, he bows his head and he says, I repent in dust and ashes. But at the heart of Job, he never stops trusting. Over and over again, he says stuff like, I know I will see God, that I have a redeemer. Job says, if there was someone who could put his hands on us both, he's anticipating God providing a way for man to be reconciled. Job says, in my flesh, I will see God. Job says, though he slay me, yet I will serve him. Job is not perfect, but he never stops trusting. His wife comes to him once and says, just curse God and die. Now, you might be thinking he's supposed to shake his fist at God and curse God and God would strike him down. But probably his wife is saying, this is so bad, why don't you just take your own life? That's what cursing God would mean in this sense, is an act of suicide. And Job says, should I not accept both the blessings and the trouble that God sends? I will not do it. Job's friends. Okay, I don't know if you noticed this, right at the end of chapter 2, I think, or beginning of 3, His friends show up, and it says they sit with him for 7 days and say nothing. All right. If I were just to sit here for 70 seconds and we all said nothing, you would feel pretty awkward. 7 days is a long time. And this is the best ministry they could have had. When your friends, when people around you are suffering, they don't need your words nearly as much as you might think. They don't need you to explain it to them. They don't need you to point them usually to things that are hopeful or how there's a silver lining. What most people need is a hug. Someone who will just sit in the room. This is what Proverbs was telling us a minute ago. Better is a neighbor who's near. Here are these friends who traveled in and they just sit in silence. And it was the way to comfort. They grieved with him in silence. But the rest of the book, from chapter 4 on till about 32 or whatever, the friends speak. And what their chief theology is God is fair and the world works for righteous people. Now, this is easy for people like them to say because their lives were going okay. But it seems like life works for righteous people. And so, Job, there must be some kind of sin you should be addressing. Because if you're righteous, things will go well. And if you're unrighteous, things will go badly. Today, there's a prevalent view that if you believe enough, God will give you prosperity and health. Well, we know from Job that's not true. Job was upright and righteous, and he didn't get health and wealth. It was all taken away from him. In fact, it was because he was righteous. When we get to the New Testament, Jesus encounters a blind man, and the disciples say, was it because of his sin or someone else's? They have the same theology as Job's friends. If bad things happen, it must be because someone had sinned to cause it. And Jesus says, neither. The reason he's blind is so that you can see the power of God. And then Jesus heals him. And of course, Jesus himself suffered, and he was utterly faithful. And so you can't connect, at least in a one-to-one sense, suffering with some kind of sin. It isn't always God trying to teach you about sin or get you over something, or because you've done something wrong, now you're having to learn the consequences. If you overspend your money and have to declare bankruptcy, that suffering is because of sin. If you take illegal drugs and get a disease, that suffering is because of sin. But a lot of our suffering, like the virus and the quarantine, that's indirectly because of sin. The world wouldn't be like this if there were no sin, but it may not have anything to do with particular sins. It may not be God's particular judgment on something that you've done in any stretch. At the end, God confronts Job about Job's questioning of God, and he confronts his friends about their bad theology. Job prays for his friends and they are forgiven. Job confesses his sins and he's restored. And God never answers the question that I want answered when I'm suffering. Why is this happening? God never gives Job that answer. In fact, here's the answer God does give him. Job, where were you when I counted the grains of sand that would make the beaches? Where were you when I put the earth on its axis and gave it its proper tilt? Where were you when I made the warhorse magnificent and the ostrich stupid? I mean, Job's answer is he just kind of shut his mouth. God's point here was you keep asking the wrong question. You keep asking the why question, and it's the wrong one. If you're going to, in all your ways, acknowledge God, and particularly in all your suffering, acknowledge God, then the right question is not why, but who. God would say, I'm running this universe. And so you follow me wherever you go. It's just like Ecclesiastes. In your suffering, worship God, keep his commandments. There isn't anything else. This is going to be vital. Jesus comes along later and he will say there are two things that can rob you of your faith. He describes in the parable of the sower, throws out seed, and the two people respond. Actually, three people respond to the message of the gospel. One group bears fruit and it's beautiful, right? There are two groups who respond but then leave. And Jesus says one group responded, but they were caught up with the concerns of the world, education and power and influence and wealth and money and feeling good and being respected. And Ecclesiastes says, vanity of vanities. It's like chasing after the wind. The other group is the group that suffers persecution and experiences hardship. And they go, I don't think I can keep this up. It's too hard. And the book of Job is written to them. There are only two things that can ultimately damage your faith. Here it is: the cares of the world and suffering. Ecclesiastes says those cares of the world are like chasing after the wind. And the book of Job is like, tells you that suffering is from God's hand. You can trust him even in the midst of it. All right, that gets us to the Song of Songs. Let's turn the corner. Let's move from suffering to, a book that historically Jews wouldn't let their sons read till they were 35. All right, what does Song of Songs say? All right, it's poetic, it's intense. As you read it, this is so much more fun to do in person, by the way, because we'll be sitting in class and I'll start talking about the Song of Songs and I'll read a few verses and you guys won't even look up. You just kind of keep your head down, no eye contact. We're all just gonna pretend no one else is in the room. And today that's actually the case. You're like, good, there's no one else in the room. And in fact, I can keep my screen off. I can, hide. In fact, right now, I'm going to get a bowl of cereal and no one will know. Okay. The Song of Songs, also called Song of Solomon and also called Canticles. I'm going to tell you, in my estimation, Song of Songs or Song of Solomon is not written by Solomon. I think it's possible that Solomon wrote it about the one of his wives that he loved, because most of his marriages were for religious purpose. I mean, not religious, political purposes. The idea is you would marry a woman from another country, and then as a result, that father wouldn't attack your country because he doesn't want to attack the country where his daughter is living. It was kind of a treaty. That's how you signed a treaty. You married the daughter. So most of his marriages were political, not romantic. His concubines are harder to explain because those probably were just, well, you remember in Ecclesiastes when he said, I'll deny myself nothing? That was him denying himself nothing, taking anything he wants. I don't think Song of Songs was written by Solomon. I think it was written by someone, or at least about someone who their love made him feel more princely, at least in their own home. I mean, if you think about it, Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, does a little bit about weddings. And he says, that's what we do. We pretend we have a kingdom. We have a big, procession. We have beautiful clothes. We stand up in front of each other like a prince and a princess. And, there's a certain sense in which that's what we're doing. We're experiencing the royalty. And so if you follow the book of Song of Songs, here's the message: love is good. And here, love means that romantic and emotional and physical love between husband and wife. Love is good. It's delightful. It is beautiful. It is satisfying. It is desired. Love heals. It's powerful. And at one point, God speaks, and we get his sort of omniscient interpretation. It's right in the center of the book. Right now, how we're going to interpret this, I think you should think of Song of Songs like a play. where you've got lines. There are lines that are given to the woman, the lead. There's lines given to the man, the male lead. And then you've got this chorus, the way kind of old plays and Greek plays were written, is they had a chorus in the background. The chorus kind of helped you orient yourself to what's happening while the characters carried along the dialogue. And I think there are a couple ways to start to go through the order. It is unclear to me when this couple gets married. I have almost always thought it was in chapter 3 and 4 is when they get married. I've recently become persuaded that maybe chapter 4, in which you have this really explicit, you got this scene that if they made the movie of Song of Solomon, none of us would be allowed to watch it. Okay, it's the scene where he starts describing her hair, and then her eyes, and then her nose, and then her mouth, and then her neck, and then he just keeps going down, and he doesn't miss anything, like teeth, everything. He notices everything, and he describes it in poems and metaphors, and you're like, am I supposed to be here for this? That's the way you feel. One commentary that I read on this suggested that what you're actually seeing there is a dream sequence. You're seeing this bride anticipating her wedding day, and she's fantasizing about what it would be like. And I don't know the answer. I don't know if they got married and then they have that scene, or if that's her fantasizing and the marriage is later. It's hard for me to comprehend. But whatever version you take of that, the scene is really graphic. And after it, you get God speaking and giving you the authoritative interpretation of their sexual intimacy. Now, I want to look at each of these real quickly. And this is all we're going to do. I don't know what time it is. Okay. I'm going to try to be done here in just 7 or 8 minutes. So I want you to see these passages. Love is good. All right. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Hang on, I got to change my screen. Yeah. Oops. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. All right. You guys might be like, what's the big deal about wine? Well, wine was luxury. It was luxurious. It tastes good. And she's saying, your love is better than luxury. Now, chapter 4, verse 10, his language. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. All right. You ever come home hungry, and then the smell of roasted roast beef cooking in a crock pot, or bread coming out of the oven. And when you walk in, it is like, oh my goodness, I am home. Yes. All right. He's saying that the way she takes care of herself, that when he smells her fragrance, her perfumes, that's that experience for him. It's better than coming home hungry and smelling the cooking in the kitchen. It's delightful. All right. Love is beautiful. Song of 115, verse 60. Here we go. This is great. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. Behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green. Oh, that's funny. Because, you're like, you're so beautiful. You're so attractive. You catch my eyes. Our couch should be green. That sounds just bizarre. And if you ever, guys, try to use this line, it might not go over nearly as well as it did for him. But the point of the green couch, green was the sign of springtime, of awakening, and the couch was another word for a bed. And if I need to explain it more detail than that, we'll have to do it privately. But the point here is, he's saying his sexual desire is awakening. Because of her beauty. All right. Love is satisfying. Chapter 4, verse 11, your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Now, he's describing a kiss. Your lips are like nectar. Honey and milk are under your tongue. He's describing a very intimate kiss in which it tastes good to him. It's like the best of the best taste. Nectar, honey, and milk are like really luxurious and great things. And the fragrance of Lebanon was a high dollar item. And so he's like, everything about this is great. And then love is desired. Who is this who looks down like the dawn, beautiful as the moon, bright as the sun, awesome as an army with banners? The dawn is the time where somebody who's been out all night starts to see the sun come up. And it's the first crack of light that makes him go, yes, the day is here. The moon gives you light in the darkness. The sun scatters everything. And an army with banners, now we're swapping metaphors, but an army shows up with banners displayed, means you're safe. You have the protection of the army. And so all of these are desirable things. All right. Now, this is one of the things I like a lot about the Song of Songs, is that love is healing. In chapter 1, verse 5, this is the woman talking. I am very dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Right. If you hear what she's saying is she had to go out into the sun because she had to help keep the vineyards. And because she was out in the sun, she's got a tan. Her skin has gotten darker because of the sun. And now we're like, isn't that great? That's what people want. That wasn't in her day. Pale skin represented beauty because it meant you had probably wealth. You could hire people to work out in the field for you. And so having really pale skin was beautiful. If you look at like paintings in, ancient world, you always saw the beautiful women were like pasty white. That was what was beautiful. And so here she is looking at her tan skin, looking at it and saying, don't look at me. I'm flawed. That's kind of her understanding. So here's the response just a couple verses later. If you do not know, O most beautiful among women, follow the tracks of the flock and the pasture your young goats beside the shepherd's tent, because he's a shepherd too, and we'll be near each other. And he says, I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels. He describes her appearance and talks about her beauty to him. And now you see, I've got listed verses 15 and 16. That was the verse we just saw where he said beautiful 3 or 4 times before he said the couch is green. He's describing how she's beautiful to him. Now, she says, I'm dark, so don't look at me. I'm flawed. He says, most beautiful among women. You have beautiful cheeks and neck. You're attractive to me. I desire you. And then now, look what she says to herself after this. Chapter 2, verse 1. I am the rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. She's changed. His love for her changed how she saw herself. She became this flower in the midst of the valley. The valley was the low place in which there were a lot of things that were just low and discarded, yet there in the center is this beautiful flower. And she says, that's me. His love for her gave her confidence. It addressed her insecurities. This is how love's supposed to work. This is how we're supposed to experience, first and foremost, the love of Jesus for us, is that we say, he sees in me something he wants to love, and that makes me valuable. Now, the Song of Songs, I don't personally think, and I'll say this again in a minute, I don't think we're supposed to see Song of Songs as this allegory in which the man represents Jesus and the woman represents the church or Christians or believers. But certainly Jesus loves us. And so when this describes what love does, we can expect love to do those same kinds of things. And because he loves us, it deals with our insecurities. He loves us. And so my insecurities don't ultimately matter anymore. And then love is powerful. All right. 3 times they say in the book, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or does in the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. It's not yet. She says the desire for love and sexual intimacy is so strong. Don't stir it up. Don't awaken it. Don't get it started, because it's uncontrollable. It's beyond my ability to restrain. Be careful. Now, this is great. She's not saying love is bad. She is not saying that it's something that is, to be avoided. She's saying because it's so powerful that it has to be kept in the right places. The image I want you to have in your head is a fire. If you put a fire in the fireplace on a cold winter's day, it's great. It brings light and heat, a place for the family to gather around. It's beautiful. If the fire gets out of the fireplace, it destroys everything it touches. That's sort of the idea, because love is so powerful. She says, don't get it started until it's time. I mean, you capture what she's saying, because it's powerful and it's mine, and there's the person here that it's for. I have to keep it under control until it can be released. And what happens when it gets released? All right. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. If a man traded for true love all of his possessions, people would go, you fool. If he became rich but had not love, they would say, what a poor man. If floods come, it can't stop love. If enemies come, love flashes like a fire and destroys. Love is stronger than death. Now, this is the scene. That's the big major point in the book of Song of Songs, is that love is so fierce, so strong, nothing can stop it. At this point, I'm going to move out of the sacred into the less so sacred. In the Princess Bride, the movie, the scene where Princess Buttercup says to Wesley, I thought you were dead. And he says, death can't stop true love. That's the idea. And if you want to see this in more real and precise terms, Jesus loves his church, loves his believers, loves you and me enough that he would go through death for it. But death couldn't hold him, because love is stronger than the grave. That's the picture. That this is not an allegory of Jesus and the church, but his love for us is like this love and better than this love. And so love can't be overcome. Now, if you think of love primarily as romance, you're going to be disappointed. Romance is actually weak. It feels strong. It feels like this burning desire and a passion that gets awakened. But romance ultimately is a flash and goes away, comes back, goes away. It feels good, it's fun, but it's powerless. What Song of Songs is describing is this love that bonds someone together in a powerful way. I mean, this is what God says to happen in marriage, is that the two will become one flesh, that they're to be joined together by God and never separated. This is a reflection in some ways of the Trinity, which is even beyond our understanding. And so we have this powerful force of both the act of love and the legal matters. We unite home and we share space and furniture and bank accounts. And then you have the physical union, and it is so powerful that it unites people together. So don't stir that up or awaken it until it's time. But when it's time and you let that love run free, it is as strong as death. It overpowers everything. And when the floods come, it can't quench it. And so you get married and you experience this love for each other. You let it grow and run wild like it's supposed to. And then hard times come. You have financial troubles, you change jobs, you have kids you've got to raise, and all the demands of life. And then you have your own sin and your spouse's sin, and yet this fierce love overcomes it all. And in that fierce love, you start to taste Christ's love, which is better still. So what's God's words about all this? All right, chapter 5 is either after the fantasy or after the honeymoon. I don't know which. But either way, she is recognizing what he has experienced. And here's what he says: I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. Their sexual union was pleasing to him. And then you get the voice of God. Here's his take: eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. This, in its right context, is God's gift. And he's saying, I want you to experience it in its fullness. Let it captivate you. Let it influence you the way alcohol influences someone. Eat and drink and taste and be full. I like to end here, in part because I love you guys, and I love being around you, and I think it's really just a gift for me to get to kind of do this class. And this is a good way to end. It's a beautiful and high point in which you're considering the wisdom of God. And look here, his wisdom is intended for you to have joy and pleasure. I want you to remember this, because one of the big questions that will come to your mind is, can God really be trusted? Can he really be trusted? Because he sure does seem to say no to things that look like they would feel good or be a good experience. Can I really trust him? It seems hard to trust him right now. He's taken away all of those, last things of the senior year, those milestones I've been looking forward to for 13 years, or at least a portion of it. He seems to be withholding those things from me. Can he really be trusted? And here you can hear the Song of Songs writer, and you can hear the voice and the heart of God saying to you, you can trust me because I'm giving you good things. And even when I call you through suffering like Job, I'm running the universe and you can trust me. And when you walk through life and have no idea what all of this means, trust me, worship and stay with me. That's Ecclesiastes. And so in every place you find yourself, on every way in which you're walking, and in every practice you are doing, in all your ways, don't lean on your own understanding, but acknowledge the Lord, and he'll make straight your path. All right. I am really proud of y'all. You have endured things that are unusual and difficult for, hang on. Oops. Are you guys still there? Oh, did you? Oh, there you are. Okay. I've been glad to get to be the Bible teacher for you guys. I love doing this class, and I kind of hate May every year. So at least this year, um, I want to be able to say like this over the screen. If I don't get to say it in person, I admire you guys. I'm proud of you, and you've done well. You've weathered this season and accomplished a lot more than most senior classes are asked to do. And I am confident that the God's at work with you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that will look like, both through hardship and through blessings. Um, okay, I'm just rambling and gonna get misty-eyed in a minute. So I love you guys, and thanks for making time for this morning. If you got questions about anything that we talked about, you can ask them. You can send me a text message or an email, whatever works. And if you want to talk a little bit about journals, test, or essay, I'll hang around and you guys can say, hey, I have this to talk about. Or you can just bail off and I'll get stuff from you when I get it from you. And then I'll see you guys soon. You're dismissed if you need to go.
About the essay, I was just wondering how long you wanted it, or just like, I don't know, just general.
Yes.
Dad, your Zoom meeting was not on RenWeb.
Is it not? All right. Hang on. Let me I'll take Bella's question. I'll talk about that. I thought I did put it on RenWeb, and I'll have to apologize for missing that. Bella, as far as how long it should be, I think you can probably do it pretty well in a couple of pages. You're welcome to write more than that. You can even write less if you do it well. I don't really have a particular length in mind. I just want you to interact with it well and think through things we've talked about the Old Testament in class, and try to evaluate the things he says. There'll be stuff I hope that you go, I like this, I think this is important. I hope there are things that you criticize, and I hope there are things you say, here's how he could have understood the Bible better.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
help?
you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yes, sir.
So Maggie, I didn't have it on there?
I don't think so.
I didn't know about it until like 10:20 when Maggie texted me, because I didn't see it on RenWeb. So could you send me the recording if you recorded it?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna probably put the recording on YouTube, and I will send you the link to that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the miscommunication. It is too on RenWeb.
Where?
I'm just sitting here.
I'm on RenWeb right now.
Lesson plan.
I'm looking at RenWeb.
Monday. What?
Nobody goes to lesson plan. It's all on homework.
Oh, I didn't go to lesson.
That is not my fault.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been putting some stuff on lesson plans and some on homework. Lesson plans are more like objectives and what we're trying to accomplish. Homework was, stuff you would actually do. And I guess I could have put this on homework too. So anyway, I apologize. Like I say, I'm recording it, and I'll put the recording up, and I'll send out the link so that if anybody wants to go back and see it. And I'm happy to send you some version of the keynote notes if you want that. You just got to let me know. Bella, and anybody else who wasn't here beforehand, I said that I know you guys have a lot going on this week and things that are happening and other classes. And so everything's due on Friday at 5, but I will not be giving any penalties if it's turned in late. Use that information any way you see fit. I guess I'll
What do you
have
mean
a
by
deadline.
late?
I mean, if you don't get it into me by 5 o'clock Friday, let's say you didn't turn it in until Tuesday of next week, you won't get any grade penalties.
Okay.
I'm only so. In other words, if you know, some of you just want to be done by Friday, so do it and get it done. Some others of you may say, you know what, it would help me a lot if I just put this off till next week, because next week will be less work and I can do it on Tuesday, and I'm fine with that.
Awesome.
If you're taking the test, I need to know so that I can send you the link to the form, Google form that the test is. And if you're writing, I just need you to send me the writing when you're ready. Send me your journal. If you're typing it, you can email it to me. If you're handwriting it, take good pictures, because it's easier to read if I can get a good picture. Anybody else? Man, it's nice to hear you guys since I can't see any of y'all. It's nice to hear you. All right. I will see you guys soon, Lord willing.